Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second presentation of a three-part series on my topic of exercise. This installment is entitled Don't Sweat It, Hydration for Exercise. So before I start, I'd like to ask everyone a question. How many of you remember my first presentation? Okay. Well, let's see. So what are some of the things you remember? So the people that raised their hands. Can you keep them raised? And I'm going to pick on somebody to say something. Okay, go ahead.
How to do a proper push-up.
Sure. Okay, that's good. Is there anything else that anybody else remembers? Okay.
How to work out if you don't have a gym membership. Like things to do at home.
Right, with little equipment, a little no equipment. Good. Two, do you remember something?
You were sweating like a pig.
Right. Very true. Very true. I was sweating like a sponge. So that's right. I was sweating profusely, but sweating like I was during the exercise portion of my last presentation is a very important bodily function. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So during this seminar, you're going to learn about sweat and its importance, the conditions affecting sweat rate, and finally, how to calculate your own sweat rate. So there are several ways that the body loses water. The first one, as I mentioned before, is the sweat. And then sensible is basically what it means is you feel it coming out. So for example, ventilation, your body uses water to keep your airways ventilated. So obviously if they dry out, you have a lot of trouble breathing. So it's insensible in the sense that you don't feel your body actually keeping your throat and your lungs hydrated. Skin as well. So sweat is different from skin in that, in terms of skin, you also have to keep that hydrated. So when your skin kind of gets dry and crackly, you kind of have to moisten it up a little bit. So that's insensible as well. And then excreted waste is another one. So that would be something like when you go to the bathroom, either bowel movements or urine. So I'm going to focus on sweat. So sweat has a very distinct composition. Mostly is made up of water. There's also, as you know, electrolytes in it. So as Michael Jordan right here, this is a Gatorade ad. But Gatorade is one of the sports drinks that has electrolytes in it. So sweat is also composed of mostly sodium. So it's mostly made up of sodium in terms of the electrolytes. But other electrolytes include potassium, chloride, iron, calcium, magnesium, urea, uric acid, ammonia, and lactate. And the purpose of sweat is basically to thermoregulate. So that's basically your body's way of keeping a constant temperature. So obviously if you start overheating during exercise, your body's going to start sweating, and that's going to help keep your body temperature under control. Water is also important for your body for many different things. It's also a medium in which many of the reactions happen in your body. So without water, a lot of the reactions that kind of keep a lot of your life processes going is going to be hindered as well. So before going to the next slide, can anybody think of any ways that, or any factors that could possibly affect your sweat rate? So a lot of the time you might, if you're exercising, you kind of feel, you might sweat more during certain conditions than others. So can anybody think of any, a couple off the top of their head? Heat. So that's a good one. So heat, if it's very hot outside, you tend to sweat a little bit more than if it's a little bit cooler. That's a good one. Is anybody else?
Physical activity.
Right, physical activity, that's true. So if you're moving as opposed to if you're not moving at all, right? Okay, that's a good one. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Hydration.
Correct, right. So hydration status. So obviously if you're more dehydrated to begin with, it's going to be a lot harder for your body to sweat and keep the body regulated. That's good. Okay, good. So right here on the second one here, we have, as Hector said, hydration status. So obviously if you're not as well hydrated, your body's going to have a lot more trouble regulating its body heat. Other ones would be intensity and duration of exercise. So can anybody think of why, if intensity increases, what would theoretically happen to your sweat rate? Would it increase or decrease? Really quiet. Increase, I heard increase, so that's right. So your sweat rate will increase if you're going harder, right? If you're running faster, you tend to sweat more. And environmental conditions, as Sue said, so heat, obviously if it's hotter outside, you tend to sweat more. As well as if it's more humid outside, if there's already more water in the air, it's going to be harder for the water on your skin to evaporate, and that's how your body cools itself. And finally, clothing. So obviously if you're wearing a lot of clothing, that tends to make you sweat a little bit more. But the definition of sweat rate is basically the volume of fluid loss per unit time during either a training session or competition. So we're going to go into how to measure your sweat rate. And this is very important because you want to know how much water you're losing so that you can rehydrate yourself either during the exercise or after the exercise. You don't want to be dehydrated at all. That'll affect your performance. So there's several things that you want to measure when you need to calculate your sweat rate. So the first thing would be your weight before exercise. So you're going to weigh yourself before, then you're going to weigh yourself after, and then you're obviously going to keep track of how much you're drinking throughout the exercise. So that will obviously affect your body weight as well. And there's other tips on how to make a more accurate sweat rate measurement. The first one is to use the same scale. Obviously, if you're using different scales, they tend to be off. If they're not calibrated toward each other, it's going to be a little bit hard to get an accurate measurement. The second would be to at least to weigh with the least amount of clothing on. So the more clothing there is, the more inaccurate it tends to be. And also trying to go to the bathroom before weighing. So when you go to the bathroom, obviously if you go in the bathroom in the middle of your exercise, you also have to take that into account. So that kind of gets a little bit dicey. So you kind of want to eliminate that by either going to the bathroom before or after you exercise, and after you weigh yourself after the exercise. And also in the middle of exercise, you try not to consume food, because obviously, you know, some foods do tend to have water, obviously fruits, things like that, or even protein shakes, there's a lot of water in them. So you try to want to minimize that, so by not taking anything in during exercise except for the water, it's easier to keep track of how much water fluctuates here. So the equation to find your sweat rate is just subtracting the weight after exercise from the weight before exercise, and then adding how much fluid you're intaking during exercise, and dividing that by the duration of exercise. So the duration would be the period of time, and then the top you would get a volume. So it would be a volume per unit of time, like we kind of discussed in the previous slide. So this is a little case study like Chu did before in his presentation. So we're going to do a little example here. So I'm going to have you all kind of take out a pen, and maybe you can use the backup piece of paper you received in the first one. So this is a case study. Brian, a college student, wants to figure out his sweat rate during a quick cardio workout. His data is as follows. Weight before exercise is 150 pounds. His weight after exercise is 148 pounds. And he worked out for 30 minutes, so kind of something quick. And the amount of fluid he drank during exercise is 16 ounces. And I gave you a little helpful conversion here. So 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. And then I gave you, again, the equation on the bottom. And I gave you a little hint to calculate the sweat rate in ounces per hour. So I'll give you guys a little bit of time. I'll walk around if you guys need some help. How's everybody doing? Does anybody need any help? How's everybody doing? Is everybody getting there? time, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to do ounces per minute. So that's a minute or 30 minutes, right? Just have to give it double ounces, right? 30 minutes. Because if it's 48 ounces per 30 minutes, then for an hour, those are that's a tricky one, though. That's pretty. Is everybody kind of getting towards close to an answer? Does anybody feel confident in giving me the answer? Oh, yes.
96 ounces per hour.
Okay. So let's see. Correct. So I showed a little bit of the work here. So you have the work up here. So 150 pounds minus 48 is 2 pounds. You have 16 ounces per pound, so you have 32 ounces. And then the fluid intake of 16 ounces and the duration of 30. So basically you add the 32 and the 16 and divide it by the 30 minutes. So you have 48 ounces for 30 minutes. So basically for an hour, it'd just be double 48. So 96. So good job. Wonderful. Okay. So we're just going to go over a couple more review questions. I only have 3. So the first one, water loss from the body as sweat is considered sensible. True or false?
True.
True. Okay. You guys should be more confident. I feel like you should. I feel like you know this. True. Question number 2, what is the electrolyte that is most common in sweat?
Sodium.
All right, there we go. Good. We're getting good at this. Last one. What is one factor that affects sweat rate? So there's 4. So name me one. Heat. Correct. Okay, good. Heat. Everybody likes heat for some reason. There we go. So intensity and duration of exercise, environmental conditions, hydration status, and flow rate. So you all did great on the questions. My hope is that after learning about sweat and why it is important and all the conditions affecting sweat rate, you'll be able to calculate your sweat rate and thus be better prepared when you're working out in the future. Thank you for your attention and participation, and I look forward to seeing you for the 3rd part of my 3-part series. Thank you.